Mr. Wood, welcome to the office of the Indian Weekender.
Morning.
And thank you so much for making time to speak to us. Now, the last few months, they haven't been the best for you. Could you tell us what was going on in your mind when you were stood down from the cabinet and whatever happened over the last 2 months?
Sure. Look, pretty obviously, it's been a fairly terrible period for me over that space of a few months in the middle of this year. I really believe in politics and serving, and for me, the opportunity to be a minister and really advance changes that made things better for me, that was apart from my family and my children, that was the best thing I've done in my whole life. So it was a terribly hard period for me, having to step back from those roles at this time. The nature of politics is that it is really tough, and if you plan on having a long-term career, it's never going to always go up, up, up. You're going to have bumps in the road, and this was definitely my big bump in the road. And so you have to decide at those times, do you carry on? Or do you say, this is enough for me, it's too hard? And I've decided I love this, I love the work I do, I love the people I work with. And so I'm back on my bike and pushing on now with a lot of support from colleagues, my community in Mt Roskil, and friends, and I intend to keep working my way back up now.
What's been your biggest learning from this?
Look, I think probably a couple of things. What tripped me up there was I was very focused on a lot of the very significant work that I had in front of me, the policy reforms dealing with complex issues. And ultimately I let slip what seemed like some small administrative things. And so, what's the life lesson there? Look after what seems like the little stuff to make sure you can get on with the big stuff. That would be lesson number one, and that's one I've soundly absorbed. And the second one would be, just don't ever underestimate the value of your friends and your colleagues around you at a tough time, because what helps get you through when you feel like, boy, everyone is just coming at you and wants to take you down. And I had some of that. I had people really gunning for me. It's your relationships, your nearest and dearest, your family, your close colleagues, your friends who just come in and they help you get through. So even in the good times, remember that they're the people that will help you when things get difficult, and you also remember to be that person who helps out others when they're having their hard times.
How do you think that will impact your chances this elections?
Oh, look, my political style in elections is to spend time on the ground. I door knock like crazy every single day. I go out to the local shops, I talk to people, and I've had the odd person ask me about this issue, but it's basically, compared to the things that actually make a difference in people's lives, it's just not even on people's minds. People want to talk about the cost of living, they want to talk about healthcare, they want to talk about community safety, because those are the things that make their lives and their families' lives better or worse. I think those are the things that people will vote on, and at the local level, they vote on whether they think you will be a strong, genuine representative for them, and I stand on my record there.
You were the immigration minister for quite a long time, and I remember I spoke to you about the overstayers amnesty, and you said the government was considering a decision on it. Whether yes or no, we don't know, but you were still discussing it. We haven't heard from the government at all on that front. What's happening? Yeah,
well, that is an issue that there has been work that has been going into it, and that has been being looked at over a period of time. We're now at the point in the political cycle where basically parties will bring forward their manifestos for the election to say, what are we going to do if we are re-elected? Now, Labour will be releasing our election manifesto, including all of our immigration policy, within the next few weeks. I can't say in advance what will be in that, but we will be, very, very clearly signalling in that the things we will be doing and the things that we won't be doing. So I think you'll get real clarity in that manifesto process about our intentions in this area. As I say, I can't give a hint or say what that will be, but that will really show people about how we
So
take
before the elections, we can expect a final word on what's going to happen to overstayers, right?
Yes, that's right. You can absolutely expect for that issue and for all of our other intentions in immigration and every other area, you will know what a re-elected Labour government will intend to do.
Does those plans also include widening the scope of the parent visa? Are you going to talk about it? Are you considering it?
Well, as I say, that the manifesto will cover all of the areas that we do intend to either move forward in or not move forward in. Now, that is an issue that I've heard a lot about from the community. When I became the immigration minister in 2021, I said to my officials, the number one task is to move forward and reopen the parent category. We did that before the end of that year. As I think people will know, there are criteria around that in terms of income levels, etc. And people were really happy that we moved on that. It was shut by the previous national government. We reopened it. But the call that we've had from many is to have another look, and might there be some ways of opening that up so that a greater number of people are able to see their parents here long term, even if perhaps they don't get to those income levels. So I committed at that time that we would continue to do policy work and look at that issue. We have done that. We've received suggestions from the community around things, for example, like a long-term visitor visa, which some other countries have. And again, you can expect that when we release our manifesto, there will be clarity about how we intend to deal with that issue.
Now, the Accredited Employer Work Visa, that's been in the news lately, and we've seen quite a few cases of what look like visa frauds under that scheme. You watched the rollout of the scheme very closely as the immigration minister. How do you describe what's happening now?
Well, broadly speaking, you can say that around about something like 99% or more of the people who have come into New Zealand under the AEWV have gone into work and have generally had a good experience. But what we've seen over the last few months with what we're estimating to be a few hundred migrants, mainly in Auckland and in Hamilton, is an absolute disgrace, and I'm very angry about it. We are seeing utterly unscrupulous, greedy, selfish advisors and agents who are taking advantage of migrant workers who have this dream to come to New Zealand to work and support their families. They have taken tens of thousands of dollars from these people and left them in disgraceful conditions. And I've met with these workers in Papakura and in my own electorate to try and offer my support to them. So I'm extremely angry at these people, and that is where our focus needs to be, on these people who have broken the law and who have broken their word and have behaved utterly immorally towards these workers. It's not the fault of the visa. If someone on Queen Street commits financial fraud, that's not the fault of the police or the Serious Fraud Office. It's the perpetrator who did that. The people who have committed fraud in this case, they're the ones who are responsible. Now, I think Andrew Little's done the right thing. He said, okay, we'll review the way in which we're processing the visas to make sure that the checks are as strong as they should be. And do bear in mind that we did unfortunately have these cases under old visa systems. So there was a big spate of these cases in 2017 under the old system, for example. Unfortunately, whatever system you have, you will sometimes have unscrupulous agents who try and take advantage of it, and we intend to crack down on them.
But theoretically, a scheme that virtually has no oversight. Nobody is looking at who's applying, and just employers are being accredited. Well, fundamentally, one could argue that it's always open for frauds. So are you basing this just on a high trust model, or do you think there can be a few more safeguards from Immigration New Zealand?
Yeah, I don't quite agree with that assessment. So the system does have oversight. It's a 3-step process. First, the employer must become accredited, and that is about ensuring that they are a fit and proper person to bring people into New Zealand. So the rule is in place that you do check the employers first. The question effectively here is, has Immigration New Zealand been applying that at an operational level as strongly as they should have been? And that's what Minister Little is having a look at. So I think the system itself and the way it's set up, that check first, then the labour market test, and then checking that the person is actually coming in with the qualifications and meets the criteria. It's actually a 3-stage check process. If all of those steps are gone through, we should have reasonable checks in place. Always the tension within our visa system is that the tighter you turn it in terms of the checks, it will be a bit slower. And so for the 99% of people where everything's good, if you are slowing down the process, it will slow it down for them. So you've got to make sure that you get the right balance in there. So the system moves reasonably smoothly, but you do have the checks to weed out the bad guys. And that is the work that Andrew Little is doing, just to make sure that at an operational level, Immigration New Zealand is doing that appropriately. And just remember, with this system, the reason this system is an improvement on the old system, by the way, is because you have the accreditation up front. If you find that an employer has been abusing it, you remove the accreditation. That means you have a simple mechanism to completely take them out of the system so they are unable to recruit migrant workers.
Moving on to your own electorate, Mt Roskil, it's quite a diverse electorate, and you have a huge Asian representation in your electorate. How's it going?
Yeah, I love my community of Mt Roskil. We're proud of the fact that it's the most diverse electorate in the country. A huge South Asian and Indian community who I just find warm and welcoming, and I love the relationships that I've built there. As I said earlier, my campaign style, which I learned from Phil Goff when he was the MP, you do your Facebook and your online stuff, that's important. But you get on the ground, you go door to door, you meet people at the markets, you go to the community events, you meet people face to face. And our campaign in that sense is going really well. We're getting a great response. People are supportive. Make no mistake, it's a close election, and there are still a lot of people who are making up their minds which way they go. And so conversation by conversation, my job is to convince them that Labor's really focused on the issues that matter, and there's a lot at risk with a very extreme National Act government. And I'll keep doing that every day up until the election, from dawn till dusk.
In your electorate too, law and order has been a big issue. Some stores even near where you live have been, robbed. Do you think the Labour government should have done more to fix this in time? We see new measures and new bills that are now being proposed close to the elections. Some would argue these are things that they've been demanding for the last 3 years. Has Labour been slightly late in addressing or fixing this?
Well, look, the main thing that we have been doing consistently across our term has been building up police numbers so that we have enough police active in our communities to get on top of crime, to try and stop it before it happens, and then to catch the perpetrators where it does happen. So that has been something we have consistently done. 1,800 more police on the beat than when we came into office, after National was actually cutting police numbers in some of the years that they were in office. We have then, in response to the issues that have arisen over the last year or two, looked really carefully at how we should respond to these issues around retail crime, the ram raids in particular, which are, in my community, a real concern. I make it my business when these things happen, as much as I can, to try and go and visit the people who've been affected. And it's really terrible, the impact on people who have these crimes, particularly when they're violent, affected against them. Now, the challenge is when these things happen, you get a wave. We've had these waves in the past. Do you rush in and just say, I'm going to be really tough and do something? Or do you take the time to look at what's actually happening and try and find solutions that are evidence-based that will actually fix the problem? And that is the approach that we have taken. So putting in place changes that mean that if you use a vehicle in a ram raid, that's an aggravating factor that mean you can get a longer sentence. Putting in changes that mean that if you put these offences up on social media, that can be an aggravating offence. Bringing 12 and 13-year-olds into the youth court so we can make sure that they have consequences for their actions. We've really looked at how we can put in place measures that will actually have a meaningful impact. Now, they won't change things overnight. Nothing will, and any politician who tells you that is playing you for a fool. But these are evidence-based measures that I do believe over time will help to make people safer in our communities.
Over the last few months, Labour's numbers in the polls we see continually dropping. What's happening? How would you describe that consistent drop?
Well, certainly in the first half of this year, we had a really challenging time, and New Zealanders have faced really hard issues. So, you've mentioned some of those issues around law and order, the ongoing challenges that lots of households face with global cost of living pressures. And often when people feel those things, they think, well, where do I go with my vote on that? As whoever the governing party is, are they responsible in some way for that? So you did see some softening in our poll numbers there. I think we've actually seen a bit of a stabilisation recently. And what all the polls show is that actually the gap between a Labour-led government and a National-led government, the recent polls show that being between 2 and 4% when you put the two blocks together. So we've basically got a very close election, probably the closest in easily 10 or 15 years, I would say. And every vote is going to count. What we have to show to people is that, we hear that. We know that those issues are challenging in your life. Cost of living, every time you fill up your groceries or your car, that hurts when you see that money going out of your pocket. So that's why we're really trying to focus on practical things that we can do. Cheaper early childhood, free dental for under 30s, lower cost public transport, GST off fruit and vegetables. Those are really practical things that will actually help households. And we've got to get that message across to people that, yes, we hear you, and we're the party you can trust to do those things. And actually it's a big risk if you change to the other party because they'll get rid of all of those measures. Free prescriptions if you or your kids get sick, all gone if there's a change of government to National or Act. So when things are difficult, you might look the other way, but actually there's a lot at risk if you do that.
I have one last question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate Labour's chances of coming back to power?
Oh, look, on a 1 to 10, I would say 6. I'm really confident that we can do this, but we know it's close. We know it's going to be really tight. We go into the election, as Chris Hipkins said, as the underdog a little bit, but we've got 6 weeks to go. It's a close race, and we're the ones who are rolling out those practical sort of policies, like free dental for under 30s, like free prescriptions, that are going to actually help people. And I think the more we get that message across, the more you're going to see Labour's strength build in this election. And it's also about leadership. People are going to look at Chris Hipkins and Christopher Luxon and say, who's the experienced leader who actually understands what it's like to be an ordinary Kiwi? And Chris Hipkins is going to win that battle every day of the week.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It was lovely talking to you, Mr. Wood.
Thank you. Pleasure.